organizations. And again, in front of you is Deputy Chief of Mission, Andrew Lenz, and he is here to share the opening remarks. We have a couple of people joining online, and they'll also be following up the presentation. So, karibu sana. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jackson. Thanks, Gene, and thank you to everyone for coming today. I want to apologize for being late. I hope I didn't disturb your program. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's great. Okay, I really appreciate it. Well, my name is Andrew Lentz. I'm the Deputy Chief of Mission here at the U.S. Embassy in Tanzania. And it really is a great honor to have all of you here today for this really important event. And I want to say thank you to those joining us online and welcome, particularly Heike Boltzig-Brown, Professional Fellow Program Director, and then to you, Dr. Roberts, for coming, and to you, Eva Chua, for coming and being with us. And of course, to all of the distinguished guests from Shivyawata, the change leaders, the activists. It's really important that we could all come together. And hopefully, I think we have an incredible opportunity today with all of this expertise and energy in this room to share best practices in what disability inclusive civic engagement can really be, but not only to share ideas, but then also to chart a path forward to act. So hopefully that is what we're here to do. And I don't need to tell you, but all of your voices, experiences, and energy are absolutely central to building a more inclusive and representative society and community and polity. All of us here together, we're all the same, no different. We bring, and all the people that Shivyawata represents, all the groups, the DPOs, that we bring invaluable talents and expertise and resilience to our communities, and it's going to be crucial that we tap into all of that. Just this past month, Secretary of State Blinken released a disabilities playbook, a disability rights playbook that is meant to serve as a guide for the Department of State and how we can really incorporate disability rights into all of our operations. Oh, that's important. We're good to go? Wonderful. No, thank you, Dr. Roberts. That's important. So as I was saying, the Secretary of Blinken released the Disability Rights Playbook, and it's meant to really help us as a guide to incorporate disability rights into operations and foreign policy. And he said something that at the release of that really kind of stuck with me, that 80% of people living with disabilities are living in countries at greatest risk of disruptions and disasters related to climate change. And yet, I don't know if you saw this, but it was really striking. And yet 8% of all disaster response plans worldwide incorporated people with disabilities. So that just shows you that too often, and that includes like evacuation plans. So only 8% of those plans were even thinking about that. And, that just shows that too often people with disabilities are just left behind or left to their own devices. And those aren't the only statistics that really should worry us. UNICEF is saying that 50% of children with disabilities aren't in school. The UN International Labor Organization is saying 30% of persons with disabilities, only 30% are employed. So clearly we've got a lot of work to do. And it means that not only governments, but communities, individuals, all of us need to really work together to make sure that we do have inclusive policies, inclusive ways forward. And we're taking care of everyone, not just some, but everyone. I'm happy to say that the United States has people with disabilities have driven our growth in our labor force by 30% between 21 and 2023, which is a great statistic. because it shows that we are in the United States truly tapping in to that expertise and abilities of all of our society. And I'm sure that Tanzania needs the skills and expertise and abilities of all of its citizenry here too. So in closing, I want to say as Deputy Chief of Mission, and not only for myself, but speaking on behalf of my colleagues here in public affairs and throughout the mission, we are committed to making sure that our programs and policies are truly inclusive. And I hope that you will make sure in your networks to let people know that American spaces like this, American Corners in Dodoma, in Pemba, in Zanzibar, in Mwanza. Am I missing any? I think that's it. In Dar es Salaam, Dar es Salaam. But that you see those places as safe, accessible, empowering places for people in your networks to come together and join other Tanzanian citizens and others to really be in the important conversations and to help lead toward a real inclusive society. If those spaces are not accessible, please tell us, and then we can do something about that. I also want to just flag for you, and please help us spread the word, that there are educational opportunities, exchange opportunities for all Tanzanians to participate in. And they provide opportunities to expand entrepreneurship, to get new skills, for leadership, exactly. And so when you see advertisements for Mandela Washington Fellowships or IVLP or English Access, there's a whole range of them. Please make sure that you share those, because we want to be including people with disabilities in that and make sure that they see themselves, that those advertisements, those programs are meant for them as well as for everybody. So please help us. So again, thank you so much for coming here today. Thank you for bringing your expertise. Thank you for bringing your leadership and activism. And hopefully we can really do some great work together. So thank you. Asante sana.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Asante Sana. Disian, I know that you might not stay until the end of the program, but just to let you know that Jean, the PAO, Betty, and I will be around, maybe to respond to any questions specifically. But as of now, I would like now to welcome Megan and Eva, just to share the presentation they have. And then people joining online, if you have any question or you want to share any comment, you can feel free to unmute yourself and then share your question. So, karibuni sana.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you, Jackson, for helping us organize all of this and get here today. I know the logistics might be kind of difficult, but we really, really appreciate it. So I know you're going to share our presentation. Yes, thank you. Presenter mode, maybe. Oops. Aha. So we'll introduce ourselves in just a moment, but as you know, we're here to talk about the things that we just heard from our deputy chairman, the things that are around inclusion in many different venues. So including education, including community, including employment. How do we help those inclusive practices continue and improve is what we're here to talk about today. So I know that many of you are alumni of the U.S. Department of State Professional Fellows Program and on inclusive civic engagement and also inclusive disability employment from the past. So welcome. I've had several of you as past fellows. We're excited to hear a little update later about what you've been doing and how that's going as well. So thank you for that.
Do you see presenter mode right here? Can you click that?
There it is. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so welcome. Yes, we're here to talk about inclusion of people with disabilities in schools, communities, and employment. We're looking at both the U.S. and the Tanzanian experience. So thank you. Next slide. So here's where I'm from. The the University of Oklahoma in the middle of the United States. Several of you have actually been there. Thank you. So this is our university campus where I work. I go ahead and go to the next slide. I am the director of the Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental and Related Disabilities program, which is one of the U.S. programs that prepares our workforce to work with children with developmental disabilities and their families. So that's what sort of brings me to this space. I also have a long history of having worked in schools in the U.S. as a service provider, as also a leader of our department, and then later putting together programs around assistive technology. So my background in disability comes from the school perspective and now interdisciplinary training of future leaders across many different disciplines, medical, psychology, therapy, families, all of that. So let me pass the microphone to Eva.
Hello, everyone. My name is Eva Chua. I am a special needs teacher from Al-Muntazir Special Needs School. We are dealing with children who are having neurodiversity, including autism, Down syndrome, all those type of disabilities. And I've been to the Professional Fellows program, which was held in Oklahoma. I was there in May, and the program took 4 weeks. I was in Oklahoma, and she was my host and mentor. I would like to share a little bit about the program itself. It was such a wonderful and a nice program. I've been there to learn about inclusion, especially at early intervention, because most of the time we are dealing with when the children are growing, but we don't lay the foundation for them, especially those who are having neurodiversity issues. So I've been there, I've attended meetings, conferences, and I learned how we can assess, how the US assess the children who are having autism. But also I get the time to participate in a camping whereby children with autism are getting together with their siblings and getting away from their home, having few days at the camping. It was really nice. And that's one thing I bring to my school. We are having the same event on next week, which we are inviting our students with their siblings, coming together and having different activities within our school. I hope that is very exciting and it will be very fun. So right now, I'm advocating also for inclusion, especially for students who are at early intervention stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. So exciting to hear how the learning is transferring so nicely into this environment. So today we have some objectives for what we want to get through. We want to make sure we discuss some of the similarities and differences in inclusive practices across the US, across Tanzania. We want also for you to think about and learn about some of our US legal framework, because I know that often that is used sort of as a template for some of the policies that might be developed here. But I want to talk to you a little bit about that progression and the time that it has taken and sort of the focuses as well. And then finally, for you to be able to have an opportunity to think about what actions, as we heard about from our chairman, what actions might improve inclusive practices in those various contexts of schools, communities, and employment here in Tanzania. So to start with, we'll just think about in the US, how is disability defined? And disability can be very broad. As you know, some people acquire disabilities later in life, maybe through just age or illness or accident. Some people are born with various disabilities. We have some we call developmental disabilities, where they affect a child when they're very young as they're developing, and it can be almost any type. So there are often, you see the physical disabilities, we talk about that being visible. So that's something we notice a lot of times, the physical disabilities. There can be people who have learning disabilities, intellectual disabilities, where maybe their cognitive impairment affects them. Sensory disabilities like hearing loss, vision loss, neurodiversity, as we heard before, autism falls in there. maybe just a health impairment. So in the US, when we think about the definition of disability, it's any impairment that significantly limits a person's ability to perform one or more life functions. Okay, so just as an example, my daughter, who's now an adult in medical school, very proud of her, she actually is classified as a person with a disability because she has severe life-threatening food allergies and severe asthma, and that affects her life activity of breathing, right? And it also affects her life activity of eating. So those things are considered a disability. So with that, there are certain accommodations that can be made, even in her schooling, even in her national exams to become a physician. She has the opportunity, if she has an event and has to leave that test, they can stop the clock for her. So some simple accommodations that you might not have thought of in that context. Okay. So thinking about the laws, I said I would talk a little bit about the progression and the framework. In the US, we sort of think back to the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement occurred back in the 1960s for us, where rights of humans as humans were very important. And along with that, that consideration of not only race, religion, all of the other things, but disability. So we had a disability rights movement that began around that time frame. So one of the first things that was enacted was the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which is a long time ago, right? So with that, one of the important pieces, they call it Section 504, is what we would call anti-discrimination policy, where it prohibits discrimination in any of the publicly funded programs. So at that time, if it was publicly funded, like you received money from the government, even $1, then it was important that you not discriminate against a person based on their disability. Does that make sense? So that's kind of where we started, that basic concept of human rights. And then we moved forward. We had in 1975, we called it Public Law 94-142. It's the Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 1975. And that's when it was stated in law that all children had the right to a free and appropriate public education. So with that, it was very important for us to consider those with disabilities who up until that point, especially those with severe disabilities, were excluded, often living in institutions and such, and not necessarily receiving their public education. So later in time, that was reauthorized, revised a little bit in 1990. It was renamed the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. We call it IDEA. And that was again reauthorized and revised in 2004. But basically, it's about protecting the rights of children to education and also trying to make sure that we meet their needs appropriately. That's that free and appropriate public education. Then in the homes, okay, so things, this is all, you see the arrows, things are just progressing. Ava, can you step back just a little bit so they can see? Yes, thank you. I see the lean. So we started with putting some home and community-based services in place in 1980s. So with that, the idea that you didn't have to live in an institution or go to an institution to receive your services, that those services could be provided in homes and in communities, which was a revolutionary thought at that time, actually. So with that came some of the long-term care. So in homes and communities, we have even something that we call a waiver, home and community-based waiver, meaning that the money that would have been spent on a person in an institution can now be spent on them in their homes and communities. So as you know, finances are an important piece to consider, and that's where some of that comes from. In terms of employment, there are things that happened with technology. So the Technology-Related Assistance for Individuals with Disabilities Act was in 1988. And then the most famous one that you've probably heard about, the Americans with Disabilities Act, happened in 1990. This picture here shows them signing this act. Actually, it's really kind of an important piece. But with that came many of the protections and guidelines and expectations that helped with making buildings accessible. So we have actually rules, ADA rules in the United States. So if I build a new building that's going to be publicly accessed, not my home, but if they're building a building like a restaurant or a library, that building needs to meet the ADA standards, we call it, which tells us like how wide should the door be? Which way should it open? How big is the space to turn around? How steep is the ramp? Is the doorknob something that can open? Can I get out of that building and into that building without help? Those things have been, there's so many different things that are involved in that. Now it even considers things like play structures for children. Are they accessible? Can I get to them with a wheelchair? Those kinds of things. So you can see that, but not only did it involve communities, but it also involved employment. So if I needed a job, that space that I'm going into needs to be accessible, right? So there are some limitations with that in terms of small employers who only have 1 or 2 employees, they maybe don't have to abide by the ADA regulations. But if you have a big company, yes, you do. You have to abide by those regulations. You have to put what we would call reasonable accommodations in place. Reasonable accommodations. So it shouldn't break the bank, but should be something that it's okay to have a computer station that you can wheel up under that is on a taller table or whatever it might be. It's okay to have some braille access to entry into your office building and finding which way to go. So all of those things work together. And then sort of within all of this, we had the Developmental Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act of 2000, which tied into this idea of long-term and home and community-based services. And then more recently, they have amended that ADA, that famous act, which is really cornerstone, was amended in 2008, and it extended the definition of disability more broadly. It also extended at the time when ADA was first put in place, not all like restaurants and things like that were not necessarily included, more of the publicly funded buildings, and now it's anywhere. So I think it's really exciting. Sorry, that was long, but I wanted to take you through that journey because we're still going. So you can see these arrows, there's still more work to do. And you would hear, if you're in the US, those of you who have been to the US, you probably heard that feeling over and over. We're not there. We have so much more work to do. But I think of where we've come from, and it's exciting. So I hope that in the Tanzanian context, you think that as well. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Thank you. Okay, so even in Tanzania, we have laws and policies. Many reforms are made in different acts. We pass through different acts into different years, and many acts before even 2010, but an act to make provision for the basic rights of person with disability and to provide the related matters such as healthcare, social supports, and everything, in which what we are facing right now, yes, they are providing, but sometimes the right provision or right accommodation for the people who have disability is not there. For example, when a person with hearing impairment went to the hospital, is the sign interpreter there? Sometimes it's not. When maybe a child with autism went to the eye check, if the child cannot read, what will the doctor do? Do the doctor knows how he's going to help the child to know how to read? But we will get there. Many reforms are made into different years as we go on. As just yesterday, there was a meeting, and also they are still making reforms. For now, in education, before that, we didn't have many schools for special children, especially inclusive schools. There are schools which are having units. student with any other disabilities. Where I work, we are doing inclusion, whereby our students with neurodiversity are joining the regular students for different subjects, but in social and in sports and in everything. So that helped them a lot. It's developed their cognitive, it's developed their speech and how they communicate, but also they feel happy to be there. So most of the schools needs to be very inclusive. Sometimes a school will not going to enroll a child with a certain disability because the accommodation is not there. So if many schools have these accommodations like assistive devices in communication, sign language, interpreters or teachers, many students or many children will get a chance to get education. So for us, many things are made. We still have a way to go, but at least we are in a good position right now.
Thank you. And I was just hearing about some new policies coming, so I'm excited about that as well for Tanzania. I can't wait to see. But we were talking about schools and inclusion practices in the US. So one of the things in our law that tells us the students have to be educated in the least restrictive environment. And what that means is that basically they should be educated along with their typical peers whenever possible, with appropriate support services accommodations. So we try these things, and if they don't work, sometimes we have to come back into more restrictive environments. They may end up in a classroom that is 100% students with disabilities, but we should start from the idea that they belong with their typical developing peers. So some of the things that we do to make that happen is make sure, first of all, our environment's accessible. Like you heard, we have to do that with ADA. We need to make sure that the supplies are also accessible. So if a student cannot hold a pencil or does not write or cannot see or something, is there another way they can provide written feedback, written communication? Can we use a computer? Can we use specialized pencils, grips, and things like that? We make accommodations and modifications. You heard me talk about my own daughter's accommodations, which you might not ever think of. So for children, we need to know, do we just need to provide a simple accommodation for them to be able to do the schoolwork and do the tests and show their knowledge? That accommodation might be extra time. It might be an assistant who helps them write down their answers, whatever it might be, a reasonable accommodation or a modification where we might change the curriculum. So you can have actually an alternative curriculum for a child. You typically see that for children who have multiple disabilities or significant cognitive impairment, where the curriculum is actually modified to more specific goals for their learning. We talked a little bit about assistive technology. We use things like this as part of the accommodation strategies. Training support for teachers, obviously. One of the things you hear here, and we also hear it in the US, is that teachers who are trained for general education may not feel confident in knowing how to accommodate or work with a student with a disability. So how can we help them have the knowledge, feel more confident? Also training for peers. I know you see this here as well. Awareness, anti-bullying, building buddy relationships, things like this, so that the peers know. And what's funny, I will just say this, that from working in schools, when those children grow up together, starting from an early age, it's a non-issue. This is a non-issue because the children know better, usually, how to support their peer than the next teacher at the next grade level even knows. The other kids will come in and say, no, he needs to wear his hat because the fluorescent light is bothering him. Where's Johnny's hat? So the kids will look out for each other, which is, I think, a really great benefit of that inclusive practice. And then again, that goes with what you were hearing from Ava, the opportunities for shared activities. So when we have students who are not able to be fully educated along with their typically developing same age peers, we have to be intentional about creating opportunities for them to work together, maybe a shared activity. It could be a science experiment, for example, where the student with severe multiple disabilities may still have a role to, drop something in the bucket, and then the other children might be deciding, does it sink or does it float, and writing a report about that. But there could be a piece that that child can be involved with. So that's the kind of thing that might be a creative shared activity. We'll go to.
Thank you. Okay, so in accommodation and modifications, in accommodation are all the things that make a child with disability feel comfortable in a place. If a child will use assistive devices to communicate, like tablet, or a child will use a wheelchair, or the roads will have ramps, the washroom or toilets will be accessible for the wheelchair. All of those are accommodation. But unfortunately, few schools has those accommodation, but most of the schools still, the accommodation should be there, because we can't say that all the students will come to school without any issues. We have students who are in a wheelchair. We have those who need support also. We have those who will need braille to study. So all of these things should be there, but also supports and services that can be offered to these children. Support and services, we are dealing with all the healthy issues, social workers, all other services that a typical child can get, can also a child with special needs will get. But talking about assistive devices, we already talked about that. In US, I've seen they have higher and developed assistive devices. And you can see how the students are very benefited from them. Still, in Tanzania first, the teachers should learn first on how to use them, so they can know how they can going to help the children when they are using them. Okay, the training and support for teachers, this is very important. In Tanzania, when I was in college, there was only 2 universities that offer special needs, UDOM and SECOM. It was in Tanga. And you might see even the students, we were not that many, because it wasn't that introduced to many, so they can know who will I become after this. The society wasn't that aware of, if I'll study special needs, where will I going to work? So expertise, we have very few teachers, which right now the government makes that every teacher students will get a knowledge about special needs. We'll learn about sign language, we'll learn about how to use Braille. So they will do their regular studies, regular subjects, but also they will have this extra thing which will going to help them when they are in the field. Now you are a teacher, you have this child who can't hear. Now I know sign language. Okay, now you have this child who can't see. Now I know how to teach the child to use the Braille. So that's where it's very important for teachers to get this knowledge, but also awareness for early childhood to universities, as the way she was saying. At early intervention, for example, we have people who they never have anybody in their families with special needs or with any disabilities. So if this child goes to school and finds somebody there, it helps them more to understand that we have these people in our community. It's not in my family, but it's there. The society has these people who need support. So it will be easy even in employment to work with them, to help them and assist them, but also opportunities for shared activities. In inclusive schools, we are encouraging that, to have activities that all of our students can work together and can do activities together. Thank you.
So can you go to the next slide? Yeah. Thinking about communities, we talked a little bit about some of the strategies already regarding the buildings. Can I get to the movie theater, whatever I want to do? Transportation, as you know, that's a big challenge. So to find accessible transportation is important. So some of our big transportation systems, bus system, for example, do have to have many that have a lift. They have those opportunities. Sometimes it's not as convenient. You may still have to schedule it in advance, but those things are basically available. Opportunities to practice in the community, that's one of the things that as we're thinking about communities, like especially if we're we're helping children learn and families learn, like, are they having the opportunity to get out there and try some things? And if they're having difficulties, can we help them learn? So can we help a student learn how to call for the bus, how to get on those adaptive buses if needed? Advocacy and awareness, I think we talked about this as well, is something that we work on in the US also, like sharing information and awareness so that we think about things which we often forget. I myself am very guilty of that. One of the things I forgot to do today was to give a visual description of myself for those who can't see me. I am a Caucasian woman standing here with red hair and a brown jacket, and a skirt with some high heels because, you know, I wanted to be fancy today. So when Eva gets the mic back, she can describe herself as well. So I apologize for that. We forget. So sometimes you need to tap us on the shoulder, you know, kick us under the table, whatever it is. Universal design. So this is one of the things that actually will help with this. If we remember universal design, is this, whatever we're doing, is it accessible to everyone? So we think of this in anything that we do. Is it accessible to everyone? So an example is a doorknob that you can just hit a lever is something that's considered universal design compared to one where you have to reach in and grab the knob and turn it, because for some people, they can't do that motor skill of turning the knob, but you could stick a rope on that and you can pull it down and I can open the door. So it's a universal design. Then, of course, supports for families. One of the benefits in the US, there's a lot of social safety net and support, financial support even. So if they have a child who has significant needs and needs maybe adaptive equipment to be able to access the community and get to the doctor's appointments, there are actually some financial supports to help with that. We'll go to the next slide. And do please describe yourself.
Okay. So I'm a Black woman wearing a Tenge blazer with glasses and short hair with a black trouser and flat shoes. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So in infrastructure, infrastructure is all about the roads, the transportation, and everything that it's around us. There are places where the infrastructure consider people with disabilities, but there are places which are not. We were just having a trip to Morogoro with the SGR, and we were having also students at the wheelchair, but the toilets were not accessible for them. It was so hard. And when the public transport is like this, so it means that all who are using wheelchair will not go to the washroom while they are traveling. So those things need to be very, very considered, but also new policies which are made. There are many policies which are made in education in different areas that will going to improve the different things for the people with disabilities, but decreasing stigma, awareness, and advocacy. Many NGOs are doing a good job in creating the awareness. Even when we were traveling, people were curious to learn or to understand what was going on. Like, where are you coming from? Why is he seemed normal? What's the problem? So people like to know, to understand how these things work. But the participation in the community, more, it's the awareness also. Our community, not that much, but most of them, they are aware. And before that, many families were hiding their siblings or their children with disabilities. But right now, the schools are full with them. Now we can see them. We can know that, oh, this family has this child with disability. So if you see that, it seems awareness is there. But participation in religious practices, this is very fantastic right now. We have students who are doing the training for religious. They can recite Quran. We have students who are reciting Quran. They have neurodiversity, but still they can do religious training. And we also attend, for the Christian, we attend the confirmation of our students. They get trained into churches and they get to the final. This is really encouraging because it shows that all of them can be accommodated even at the mosque and in church also. Some support for families. Families need to be encouraged, needs to learn more on how or an extra step they can take to help that one family member with disability. It's hard when you have a child or someone at your family with disability, but with this awareness and advocacy and learning or a support they can get, it will help them to know how are they going to help the family member.
Okay, so employment. The photo that's on this slide actually shows a person with pretty significant physical disabilities working from their wheelchair with a computer with a touch screen and a headset in place. So again, we have legal protections in the US, and I know you all have some policies as well. And then accessible environments, again, important. One of the new things, thanks to COVID, is that remote work options have really improved. So if a person has difficulty, thank you very much. Appreciate you attending. Yeah, and a blue tie, and off he goes. Thank you. So if a person has difficulty maybe getting to work, transportation might be difficult or something, or needs a lot of supports maybe in their home environment that are already set up, then working remotely might be an option for them. Using that adapted equipment, the assistive technology we mentioned before, having the appropriate accommodations, even in the workplace. So we talked a little bit about educational accommodations, but you can have workplace accommodations as well. If a person needs to have physical assistance in the morning, they might be able to have a later start time than everybody else, or whatever. I'm using physical as an example, but many, many different options. Again, support and training. It's helpful to train employers. So we try to do some initiatives with that. I know you all do as well. And then finally, some individualized planning and preparation. So if you have somebody who has specific needs accommodations, they need to be comfortable sharing with that employer without fear of maybe being let go or not hired. They should not be discriminated against based on their disability. So when they apply for a job, they actually do mark, do you have a disability? They can mark yes, and they can share what accommodations they might need. They aren't required to, but they can.
Yeah. Okay. So I can, we see a picture of a man sitting at the wheelchair, working at with his computer. In employment in Tanzania, I went to this conference when I was in US, whereby employers were presenting on how are they able to hire somebody with disability and how are they helping them to do. They appreciate a single thing a person can do. We are teaching our students job skills, but also we are teaching them from the lower level at a child's ability that can perform a task. Even if a child can take a cup and arrange it perfectly, that's enough. But for an employer to say that you can pay this man here only to arrange these things, that's not enough for them. So the education and awareness should be there. We need to know the proper accommodation for these people. For people with neurodiversity, they don't get these chances much. And if you see they get a chance, maybe a place it's of the relatives, of the parents, or they know the person so that they can hire the child, because they require extra accommodation. Sometimes they don't want to work. Sometimes they have things going on with the condition they have. So an employer needs to understand that. But also the environment, the workers which are there also needs to be very supportive. We have a co-worker who have had, hearing impairment. We learn sign language so we can communicate with her. Even parents are learning also how to communicate with her by sign language. So it's very nice when also the workers knows how to accommodate a person with disabilities. So vocational training for youth, we have some colleges that are offering vocational training, but the issue is the same. Do they know how to offer accessible training for this particular disability so they can make them knows how to do a task? Or do they appreciate the single task that the person can do, even if it's a small one, but it's on the person's ability? Do they teach them on how they can accomplish those tasks? But also individualized planning and preparation that goes to each person's disability to get the thing which it will going to help them in a particular job.
Two. Okay.
We can go on.
Okay. Oh, yay. So we made it to discussion. I'm so glad. I was worried we'd run out of time. But I know you all are doing a lot of great work, including those of you who are online. So I would like to just hear from you a little bit about, if you'll click on it, it'll give us our first question. Should, maybe. There we go. I was hoping we'd start with if you could describe the positive progress towards inclusive practices that you see. So you may have had something to do with it, or you may not. You may just be seeing this happening in society. But I'm just looking for volunteers who have an example, maybe of some progress that you have seen, maybe recently. There's one in the back. I'm going to run with the microphone in my high heels. Ha.
Thank you so much. My name is Hussein. I work at Ubongo as a disability and inclusion specialist. So one among the big progress, what I'm proud myself that we do as organization, talking about the advocacy, it's a matter of starting with you as organization. We have a specific program, what we call the Neurodiversity Internship Program. This is specifically dealing to support autistic youth, how to work in organization. So basically that program trying to looking ways how we can transfer in a child, from childhood to adulthood, how they can transfer from school to working condition. And then we did it for 2 years as a pilot, and then we see a lot of progress. And now we are moving to phase 2, starting to see how we can make a scalable this program. So as organization, we're proud of this because we're trying to change a lot of our policy, our policies internally, but also to see how we can expand it internationally. Because Ubongo, we're working in almost 13 countries in Africa. So Tanzania is the headquarter, but we are trying to see how this program can be scalable to other countries. Because at the beginning, at the first, we start in Tanzania as the headquarter. So that's the big progress we have. And another progress, what I see is the changes in terms of policies and the practices. We establish a lot of process, including the DEI policy, diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. All of these trying to cut across, providing accommodative way of working conditions. So we have issues like remote. We have some staff who are working remote. So we have flexible working hours and other related factors. So, and one of the student or one of the participant of the first phase, I think they come from the EVA schools. So we're really proud of that.
That's so great to hear. Next, who has something else positive progress? Gamaliel? Okay, coming around.
The first progress that I can witness is about data. For the first time, I could say Tanzania during the 2022 national census, they've been able to capture well the numbers of people with disabilities in terms of statistics. So at least we have a benchmark where we can say now we have a number, X number of people with disability in accordance to their disabilities. So at least it is something that there was a lot of advocacy around it, and also we are progressing. Another positive action was actually yesterday through the Prime Minister's office. The section of people with disabilities, youth, and employment. They launched the National Strategy for Assistive Devices, and also they launched another National Action Plan for protection of people with albinism. So what I like the most is that each and every actor, they gave their commitment and they signed those commitments on what they will do in as far as those two strategies are concerned. So there's something happening at the policy level, and also the only area that we need to put more effort is to operationalize those strategies and to make sure they are now translated into actions.
Was it proud of you? add a few on what my colleague has said. Now, at least the government has taken initiative of establishing the online portal on collecting the data for persons with disabilities, which is under the Prime Minister's office. Though it's yet to operate effectively, but we hope that's the starting point, and it gives us the green light that we will be able to collect the information about persons with disabilities. Another is that the Prime Minister's office has taken initiative of uplifting the necessity of persons with disabilities to apply their job through online process. Because it has been a challenge, most of people with disabilities in Tanzania to apply technology in applying for jobs. And they gave them a chance to submit their applications manually. And that has given a chance. That's the accommodation. It has given a chance most of people with disabilities just to apply. And last year, I think for the policies and the guidelines, we have a good progress, and we expect to have even a curriculum that provide a chance for persons with disabilities to have, to be accommodated flexibly, given that we have the system that one size fits for all. Now it is in a progress that we can see in a few years to come.
Yes. And while we're getting these, could you click to the next question, because some might be thinking.
I just want to add to what he just shared. The national curriculum right now, in early this year, there was a curriculum that was launched for even for those who cannot come to school. So children with disabilities at home are now being accommodated with education. So that is also there in place.
I think that's interesting because, you know, we talked about the least restrictive environment on the scale. Those who can't attend school at all is maybe the most restrictive, but they still deserve an education. Yes. Did you have a comment? Yes.
Habari. My name is Emiria Joseph. I'm the director of an organization, Education for Disabled Tanzania. I just wanted to congrats Tanzania, our government. Have seen a notice that shows doctors, they won't be able to get a license until they get a training in inclusion. I was very happy about that. That's a progress, and I'm so happy.
We're all learning something today. I love that. I went ahead and asked for the next question to go up, but if you still had a thought, don't feel like you can't share it. But for the PFP alumni, what impacts have you seen, like from your projects or your work, that you have seen related to these topics? I know you want to share, Fides. I'm going to make you share. There you go.
Okay, thank you so much. Actually, I'll be answering the first and the second one. Yeah, on the first, I'd like to share some progress I've seen. Like our partner is called Salt Center. They now officially launch a supermarket, which is 70% operated by the children with developmental disability. To me, that was like a wow. Yeah. And on the second question, the impact. Actually, I'm the alumni, and the knowledge and the experience I gained from the US, it built my capacity in advocacy, in mobilizing others on advocates, like self-advocates. Like now we have plenty of youth with epilepsy who advocate for themselves. To me, that is a very huge impact comparing to before I went to the US and now. Yeah, so I'm very grateful, and actually see other people who advocate for their members of the family. Yeah, this is very good impact, because like I'm a parent, people, and they look at me, they be like, if she advocate for the child, I can advocate for the baby sister, I can advocate for my, something like that. So this is a very huge impact, and looking forward, I see we are moving in a very good direction, and like we have places like we can look forward, like in the US, we have seen things and we can jump from there where we can jump from there. Yeah, that's it.
And of course, Fides was my fellow. So I get the chill bumps, listening, but I also want to make sure you don't forget to share putting together the Moms Forum. I think it's the Moms on a Mission that connects people in social media and how important to have peer support.
Brag on that. Actually, I have two members of Mom Forum. We have our secretary and our coordinator here. These are all parents, and this one is Susan. She had like 3 children with health issues, and this one has a sister who has a disability, and they both advocate. So it's because 2 years back, I launched Mothers on a Mission Forum, a platform for mothers of children with special needs. And now it's a very huge movement. We are moving forward. We have a lot which we want to share, and we are impacting other parents here. And actually, Megan has been helping me since then. Yeah.
Any others want to share something positive or maybe some positive impact you feel that you've made? But as you see, there's a third question. Oh, there we go. There's a third question you can be looking at as we.
Hi everyone, my name is Eric Mkiza, a PFP alumni. Personally, through my project, I have successfully introduced to the judiciary, particularly the High Court of Tanzania Mediation Center. I introduced the lessons which I learned from US, particularly assistive technology such as CALT, speech to text and text to speech. And on 25th of October, we have jointly together conducted a training to people with disabilities, particularly deaf and hard of hearing, together with judiciary. With the environment was very inclusive, so they have accepted to be inclusive, and to now there is a plan to put in the courtroom settings so that it can be inclusive on the captioning and everything.
Yeah, I'm interested in the aspect of legal field. The judiciary, of course, issued the rules on how persons with disabilities can access the courtrooms and the judicial issues at large. Now they have ordered that each court must have a disability desk. The vulnerable groups, but especially for persons with disabilities. And the cases involving persons with disabilities, it has been given the time limit. It must not take more than 6 months. It has to be concluded, different from other cases that can take a number of years. And also a positive aspect in those rules, it's that the cases or the documents must be translated into accessible formats. Thank you.
So interesting. We're learning.
I want to answer the second one and the third one. I am not an alumni, but my name is Zahida, and I'm the principal at Al Muntazir Special Education Needs, but I have 2 of the alumni from my school. So Miss Bijel is one. 2019, yes. And Eva also is the current one right now. So, and I have seen the progress and the change in them, especially with Eva, the ideas that she brings into the school, the siblings program that she introduced, and all the ideas that she is now. She just pops the ideas and then we have to work around it. So yes, but it's nice to see the change that they have brought in. So thank you for the program, and for the sorry, and for the I hope I can. Is that okay? Okay. So until now, what we do at Al Muntazir is we force our way out. We take our children everywhere. So is it a movie theater? If it is the STR bus, it is the bank, it is the hospital. We take our children there. Even if they are not ready to accept us, we are there. So you have to accept us. So I hope in the next, in the future, we would like to, not bag our way in, but people will be more accommodating. So that is what we want to see in the future. So thank you.
Additionally to that part of impact, let me use this opportunity to point out what I have. This is special to go to the US Embassy. I've been tasked by the High Court Mediation Center judge in charge, Judge Zara Maruma, to ask a support, if we can get support from the US government to go and do capacity building to the judicial on the inclusivity. So what I've done. So this is a message to the US Embassy. Judicial need capacity building on the inclusivity. They are ready to adopt it.
Department of Justice. Oh, excuse me, sorry. We now have the Department of Justice has an employee here in Tanzania. She just relocated here this year. So I will deliver that request in person, but we have an officer here.
Wow, this meeting has become so productive. Thank you. Are there any comments from anyone online, maybe in the chat, or can I read it? It says, hello, this is Augustino, special needs teacher from, I'm going to say this wrong, Sibusisa Foundation. We run an Employ Me program to prepare young people with neurodiversity after employment. We also raise awareness among employers to ensure a better understanding and inclusive workplace. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Augustino, for sharing. Was there another comment? A question. After this presentation, will the U.S. Embassy in Tanzania take a role to support improved education system for children with disabilities? Good question. I can tell you one thing that is happening already is that there are some like alumni engagement grants and things like that that I know some of these people who are doing some of this work have the opportunity to apply for. I can also say that what we heard earlier about the American Corners, I think they call it, are spaces that you could use maybe to promote your work, your awareness trainings, your meetings. So I know those are some simple things that are being done already. And I think we heard from the chairman that maybe we could maybe hear there's other scholarships and fellowships and things for training that I think are also available. So we'll look for those things. And if there's more to add, please let us know. Thank you. Any other comments from online? So just this last question, in case somebody has a comment. What do you hope to see in the future? Is there something specific? We heard a little bit about maybe some supports. Is there something you'd like to see in the future that would enhance inclusion of people with disabilities in schools or communities or employment? Yes, there we go. I feel like on one of those game shows.
In Tanzania, we are good in terms of making policies. We have a lot of policies in the matter of disability, inclusive education, and the stuff like that. But the challenge is those policies usually the senior leaders are the one who know them most of the time. Last week, we were with Ms. Zahida in Arusha, kind of reviewing the national strategy of inclusive education. So it's almost a 3 years implementation. But if you go to teachers in primary or secondary schools teaching students with disability, they may not aware about that, the strategy. So my future is to see those good policies, strategies, and the other plan which the government doing, going to the last mile, the final users, teachers, students themselves, parent, and community in general. That's my wishes all the time.
We need to wrap this up, Q. I'm sorry. So very strict on time, but I apologize if you didn't get your comment. Can you say quickly, super fast?
I hope to see inclusion and accessibility and standard practice in our Tanzania justice system.
So let's go to the next slide real quick. So we're just some final wrap-up thoughts we wanted to make for you is that thinking as you're doing inclusions, just some basic hints from the US, from my perspective, communication. Be sure you speak to the person, even if you don't think they are hearing you or able to respond. Start there. Use respectful language, ask questions, avoid assumptions, like the assumption that maybe someone won't be able to understand you. Using plain language. Sometimes people think to be impressive, they need to use their jargon from their field or all these abbreviations. But we find that if you just use simple language that anyone can understand, you're better at communicating across disciplines, policymakers, everybody, because we can all understand each other. And multiple modes of communication. We heard that from Ava. Maybe some sign, maybe some pictures, maybe some voice. Mix it up. Use all those different things. We'll go to the next slide. And finally, just as you're working, building on the strengths of the individual and their family, and also I'm going to add in their community so that we build some authentic partnerships where when I say authentic partnership, the issue or the problem that we're working on is in the middle. And all of these other people on the outside rings are the providers, which could be your therapist, could be your teacher, could be your parents, could be the person that's selling items in the store, that might be the employer. All of that are the partners so that we build mutual respect that values each person's contribution to that, that everyone's involved in that decision making. We have good communication, and all of that together builds trust. So those are just some final words I wanted to leave you with. I know they're pushing us out, so I will say my goodbye and thank you so much. I'll pass the microphone to Ava.
Thank you all for participating.
All right, thank you very much. Asanteni sana. Thank you. Now allow me to welcome Jean Clark to say a final words before we close.
I don't see this as closing the conversation. I see it as a beginning of the conversation. So thank you so much. I'm sorry, we're about to have our mission awards ceremony, which is why we have to wrap this up. But thank you all for your important contributions. Keep them coming. Communication, please keep the communication coming. I'm happy to take requests at any time. Use our computers, use our American spaces. I'll be the first to say they're not all 100% accessible. We're working on it. But we want to work together. Thank you again for today, and thank you for your great work.
If someone were to want to use a computer, do they email one of you to get on the list to get in? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Just want to make sure we have practical strategies. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, now I think we are almost done. I don't think if you have any comment from online, I didn't see anyone. So I have to stop. Yeah, so the next thing I think I'll walk outside, then we can walk you out. And we have to keep engaging. Asanteni sana.